Hello, everyone. Welcome to another week of Tax Talk Live with Ethan Rooshock. So tonight's topic, it will be talking about the lockdown. We've just entered into a 7-day lockdown here in Australia. So today was classified as day one of that. So hopefully it will be 7 days, not like we've seen in some of the other states where it seems to balloon out from that. So that'll be tonight's topic. So while I get people to join, I'll start with our pre-show quiz. So tonight's question is, what is the current GST rate? So we've got A, 11%, B, 10%, C, 18%, or D, 1.5%. So leave your answer in the comments, whether you're on Facebook or whether on YouTube. I can see a few people joining on both, which is really cool. So leave your comment there while I have a bit of a chat about how this works. So for those that are new here or those that have been here plenty of times before, I do this live each week on a Wednesday night. We're on Facebook, on the Rooshock Accounting Facebook page, and on the Ethan Rooshock YouTube page. So tonight I will be talking about a particular topic, which tonight I said is going to be the lockdown. So obviously we've got the lockdown here in SA. We've got lockdowns at the moment, unfortunately, in New South Wales. I think they're 4 weeks in. Victoria, I think, have been going for just over a week now. Thankfully, some of the other states are all right at the moment, but obviously that brings with it different impacts, whether it's financial or mental impacts, impacts on business, impact on individuals. So there's lots of different things that happen when these lockdowns take place. So I want to just give you a bit of an overview. And then what I'm planning on doing is actually doing a video, hopefully tomorrow or before the weekend, on the particular grants that are available. So mainly focusing here on South Australia, but talking about the Commonwealth government grants that are available. So I'll talk about them a bit tonight in detail, but then I'll jump into them with a video tomorrow or hopefully over the weekend about them as well. So we've got a few questions coming in. So a few answers to the quiz. We've already got a question coming in. So like I said, after I go through my topic, I'll jump into questions that were asked through the week, which actually I've forgotten to recording that were. So I'll kind of skip over that tonight, but I will jump into any questions anyone does ask in the comments. So if you've got questions about how any of these lockdown payments could affect you, make sure you chuck them in there, or anything tax related. We're still in tax time. I mean, tax returns are still getting lodged at the moment. So make sure that if you've got any questions about doing a tax return, if you're on there, taking advantage of lockdown, doing your return tonight and got a question about it, why not ask and you might get some free advice. So we've got a few guesses here. So we've got 10%. We've got another one that's guessed 10%. We've got another one that's guessed 10%. And D, yeah, it would be nice if it was 1.5%. So that might be a bit of a spoiler because it's not 1.5%. But our answer on our GST rate is 10%. So well done to the three of you that guessed because you all got it right. So that means that everyone gets tonight's question right. So like I said, I'll jump into the topic for tonight. So topics for tonight is navigating a lockdown. So as I explained, unfortunately, we've got a few states here in Australia that have gone into a lockdown. So I want to talk about what that means from a financial point of view for individuals, for businesses, and also just a bit about the mentality of navigating through a lockdown because they're definitely challenging. And especially here in South Australia, we haven't been through really many lockdowns. We had a really small mini one last year, but this is probably going to be our first extended lockdown. So having an idea of how that feels. So for me, as someone that hasn't been through that, explaining how that's making me feel about things. So what lockdown means to me. So obviously, it really concerns me, these things that are going around with the health effects of COVID and the mental effects of lockdowns, like the financial impact. There's a lot of different things that these lockdowns can impact beyond just the health effects, but the health effects do have to come first. So for me, for lockdown, I'm very thankful and very lucky that it won't affect my business too much. I did have some in-person appointments booked later this week, and then I do have a whole bunch next week. So I'm hoping that we're out of it by then. But thankfully, my business was built to be able to be done online. So a lot of the returns we do are online, via email, via messenger. So it is built with that in mind. So I'm very lucky in that way that it won't impact me too much financially. And I'm also very thankful and grateful that a lot of my family and close friends are also in situations where it hasn't impacted them too much. And thankfully, their health is also okay. But I definitely sympathize with those that are more heavily impacted, those that are suddenly out of work, that can't run their business, because these things are real hit you real hard financially. And then that stress just builds on that mental stress of a lockdown. So for me, like I said, I'm very lucky and very grateful that thankfully my family and friends are all healthy. and that thankfully most of us are in a situation where we're not going to be too badly financially impacted. And also, thankfully, a lot of people I know have set themselves up so that they have got backup funds, etc., for these things. We've known about COVID now for close to 18 months. So I think it's really highlighted that those that then thought, okay, when people were getting extra payments or when things are going well, that they have put money away. So the first thing I do want to talk about, so I'll attack this from two kind of ways. I'll attack it from the mental side of things and the financial side of things. So obviously from the mental side of things is that a lockdown is straight away, okay, it's going to limit your interactions with people. So that's something that's going to potentially impact your ability to then earn money, even if you can still in your job. How is that going to impact you? So now we'll just interrupt. I've got a few people joining me. So yeah, good vibes, listening and watching now, friends. And we've got a thanks, Doc. So thank you. So mentally, I think it doesn't matter whether it's just mentally as far as, okay, you're not being able to see family and not being able to see friends, how that's going to impact you. And then mentally, okay, if you are still working from home, you've got to work from home. How do you deal with that? Not being in the office, not seeing co-workers on day to day. And how can you concentrate sometimes on work-related things when you've got all this other stuff going on? So I think that's something to be fully aware of, that your mental thing might take a hit even if you financially haven't taken a hit, and that's okay. So this is obviously a little bit different to what I normally talk about, but I think it's really important for people to have that understanding that just because, like I said, in my situation, just because you might not be directly impacted health-wise or financial-wise, it doesn't mean that it couldn't be a strain on you mentally, and make sure you seek those supports. So I think that's really important. So obviously, the main thing with my channel, I'm talking about finances, so I want to talk about the financial impact of these COVID lockdowns. And then what I'll do after I've talked about just some of the impacts and some of the things to navigate, I'll talk about some of the different grants that have been announced and what support may be there to help you get through it. So obviously, financial impact is going to differ whether you're working as a wage earner or whether you're running a business. There's going to be different levels of impact of that. I think it just really highlights that the ability to have backup funds, emergency funds, is really important, especially while we've got a pandemic going on and we've got the ability for something to happen like this where, okay, so Sunday we had no idea that this was going to happen. Monday we're getting told of a partial lockdown that's not a lockdown, and now we're in a full lockdown. So things can happen really quick. So by having emergency funds, whether that's a personal emergency fund or whether in your business you've got backup funds, is really important, because quite often your bills aren't going to stop. You're still going to have to pay for groceries, pay for rent. If you've got a business, you're still going to have subscriptions that need to be paid for. Potential rent is going to be paid for, electricity bills, all these things that aren't necessarily going to come to a screaming halt. And while you may be able to claim hardship in some of these or get payment deferrals, if you've got those backup funds that you've got there ready for these kind of situations, it's going to make it a lot easier for you on the other side. You can defer payments all you want. You can get things cancelled, reinstate, but quite often this is just going to defer the pain. So if you're deferring your rent or deferring your loan repayments and things like that, all that's going to happen is then when they come back, you're going to be playing catch up. If you've got those emergency funds that can get you through where you're not going to miss any payments on bills, you're not going to do those things, that's obviously the ideal situation. So I think the financial impact of lockdown is something that we can't prepare for, but we can prepare for at the same time. We're not going to know it's coming, but what can we do to put ourselves in a situation where then these things happen, we're not as stressed as we could be. And then we can focus on all that mental stuff I've talked about and focus on purely getting through this from a mental point of view rather than stressing about the finance side. Because the financial side, if you're struggling financially, that's just going to make it worse when it comes to the mental side of things. So obviously financially is going to impact, like I said, if you've lost hours and things like that, lost business, if your business can't operate. But I would touch on quickly, if your business can still operate, okay, what can you put in place so that you can still generate revenue? And this is where sometimes it might pay to get creative. So obviously in my business, I always use that as an example. But obviously, okay, I can't do in-person tax return appointments, but I've set my business up in a way where I can do phone appointments. I can do online appointments via email, via messages. I've got different ways that I can do those appointments and still service those clients. So I've set my business up in a way that it has multiple streams of revenue, multiple ways to carry out a service. So I think you should be starting to think about that in any type of business that you're running, is what can you do to potentially have a second stream of revenue, a third stream of revenue, a second way of delivering your services. So if you're running a Pilates studio, can you go and do a Zoom Pilates session where you can still get money for that? If you're a PT, what can you do that might be able to generate some money? Have you got some kind of background in nutrition? Can you do diet plans? Can you do training program plans? Can you do a YouTube channel where you're going to record workouts that might not bring you money in straight away, but it's going to create a catalog that you could then either make money off monetization? Could you create a course where it's got those videos? Those different things that you can start thinking about is what can you do to generate money in these times? And could this be a pivot point for your business where you go, okay, I'm a hairdresser. I've got so much knowledge. I can't go service my clients. I'm going to do a tutorial. I'm going to chuck it on YouTube, chuck it on my Facebook page. And suddenly you might pick up more clients on the back end after you've come out of lockdown. You might pick up people that want to just pay you for your advice. These kind of things that I think you can definitely pivot and think of differently ways that your business can generate income. And obviously that same goes if you're just a wage earner. Okay, you might be out of work now, but that might be the time where you go, okay, you know what? I'm sick of being reliant on other people. I want to start my own business. Or what's something I could do on the side that I could do from home that maybe can generate me a bit of money, and I can do it when my job comes back. So I think just thinking outside of the box, that using these lockdowns sometimes is a good way to go, you know what? I want to advance my life. I want to advance my career. I want to advance my business. What can I do to generate more money? What can I do to generate a better lifestyle for myself? And what better time to do it when you're locked at home and you've got all the time in the world to work on these things? So I think they're definitely some of the things that you can consider when you get these lockdowns. So I know that's hard if you're struggling mentally, but sometimes these things can be a good chance to start from scratch and get something new started. So, and obviously then if your mental thing is struggling, I keep talking about it, but speak to people, speak to friends, messenger, all those kind of things. So obviously from financial point of view, I want to share a few things here of, we've kind of got two different grants that have been announced. Now, look, I've finished reading these 20 minutes ago. I did watch a bit of the press conferences today. So this is also a bit of work in progress. Like I said, I want to do a whole video on this and hopefully have a bit more refined. So keep an eye out for that. And I will make sure it covers a few of the different states. So I'll start with the one that's probably most common for everyone. And we've got a COVID disaster payment that the Commonwealth government has released. So I will try and share my screen of this. So that is a Commonwealth government payment. So therefore that's obviously eligible for everyone, but I will go through the general eligibility rules here. So this is available for areas that the Commonwealth government deem as a hotspot, but a lot of the states have then extended that. So here in SA, I'll use that as an example, we've got the Greater Adelaide region that's been deemed as a hotspot by the Commonwealth government from memory, but the whole state is in lockdown, but the state government are going to support this. So they're going to support those that are in regionals that are in lockdown. They're going to cover, and you're going to be under the same eligibility. The state government are just funding some of it. So pretty much to meet this one here, this is for people that are working for someone. So you've lost income and don't have appropriate paid leave entitlements. So this one down here, and we've got, so you're an Australian resident, you're 17 years or older, you're not getting an income support payment, ab study, living allowance, dad and partner pay, parental pay, etc. So you're not getting one of them, and you're not getting the pandemic leave disaster payment or a state or territory pandemic payment or a small business payment. So pretty much they're saying if you're not getting another payment, then you're eligible if you've then lost income. So that's going to be the key thing here. Have you lost income? So that kind of covers the basics of that one there. And then what I'll do is find, I'll share the next one, which will talk about what you're actually eligible for. So this one here. So we've got here of, now this is still obviously being updated. So we've got different periods here where they're talking about, but the main thing here is this here. So if you're eligible, you get a $375 for each relevant period if you lost either between 8 and less than 20 hours of work, or a full day of your usual hours of work for the week. And then there's a different level of payment there for if you've lost 20 hours or more, you get $600 for each relevant period. So what this pretty much means is that it's backdated. So I believe these things will come in after the first 7 days of a lockdown. And then once you've applied, you're in this until that lockdown ends, unless your situation changes. So it's not a lot of money there, but at least if you're doing over 20 hours a week, it's $600. Between that 8 and 20, it's $375. So you will get some type of payment there. Obviously, this isn't going to match what you would normally get in a lot of situations. But so this is the Commonwealth Government Disaster Payment. So like I said, this is a Commonwealth funded one. So that's currently in place for those that are in New South Wales. It's also in place for those that are in Victoria, and it will then kick in for those that are in SA after that first week. So that's for people that are earning a wage. You've got a job and you obviously can't work because of the lockdown, so you're losing hours. So whether you're in hospitality, whether you're in retail that's shut down, all those different industries that have had to shut, you can't work, and therefore you're eligible for this. Read those eligibility criteria. So this is done through the Services Australia website. So that will have those details on there, and then you'll be able to apply through the MyGov system. So it'll be really important that you've got MyGov set up so that you can make this application. So we've got a question here of, are these payments taxed? So yes, this is a taxable payment. So this will get included. It just says down below here, I believe, the COVID-19 disaster payment is a taxable payment. This means that you'll need to include it in your income tax return. So obviously these will go into next year's tax return, but yet they're taxed a bit like job seeker is, or like your employment wages are. You're going to be, now you may not have tax withheld on these, but they will be taxable. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you end up in a prolonged lockdown period, then if you're getting these payments with $0 tax withheld on them, just keep in mind, if you then go back to work and have employment income for the rest of the year, then potentially you could end up with a bit of a tax bill there. So it's just something to keep in mind. And it is something that I need to talk about at some stage, because a lot of clients have been getting caught out with this kind of stuff. So that's kind of the eligibility for that one. So I'll get that one off here. So that's the eligibility for those that have lost employment income. Then we have the South Australia. This one's going to be based on South Australia. So I'll bring this one up here as well. But this is for businesses. So unfortunately, there's some good flexibility with this, but unfortunately, there's a few clauses here that I think are going to catch some people out and mean that businesses that I think could be struggling are going to miss out. So this is the COVID-19 Business Support Grant here for July 2021. So the SA government has announced this support grant, and this is to do with the COVID restrictions imposed from the 20th of July 2021. So grants of $3,000 for employing businesses and $1,000 for non-employing businesses are available for eligible businesses whose turnover has declined by 30% or more as a result of the COVID-19 health restrictions in the week commencing 20th June 2021. So that's not a huge grant, but it's still $3,000 for employing businesses, $1,000 for those that don't employ. But the eligibility to be eligible for the $3,000 grant, a business must meet all criteria listed below at the start of the restriction period of 12:01 a.m. Tuesday, 20th of July. So be located in SA. So obviously this is just for South Australian businesses. This is the one that's going to probably catch a few of those really small businesses out. Have an annual turnover of $75,000 or more in 2021 or the 2020 financial year, and be registered for GST. So if you're not turning over that $75,000 of income, unfortunately, you're not eligible for this. So this is unfortunately going to wipe out a lot of small businesses, whether they're small PTs or small beauty services. If they're not turning over that $75,000, unfortunately, they won't be eligible. And they have to also be registered for GST. So have a valid and active ABN, must employ people in South Australia. So to be eligible for the $3,000 one, you have to be employing people. And you must have an Australia-wide payroll of less than 10 million in the 2020 financial year. And this is the key one, have experienced at least a 30% reduction in turnover in the week of Tuesday, 20th July to Monday, 26th of July. So you need to compare that to the prior week due to restricted trading conditions. So you've got up until 30th of September to lodge this. And as I said, the ones that want to apply for the $1,000 grant, they'll be subject to the eligibility as above, but excluding the employing people one. So there's more detail about the employing people one. But again, you can't get this if you are getting the Commonwealth COVID-19 disaster payment ban. And then this is the key part here about businesses will be required to declare that they have experienced a loss or reduction in turnover due to restricted trading conditions. They will not be required to provide any supporting information at the time of the application, but will be required to retain the supporting information for 12 months for audit and compliance purposes. So pretty much you need to keep either turnover comparison data for the week prior to the assessment period, email or text to and from clients showing that detailed cancelled orders, appointments, receipts for refunds provided, invoices or delivery dockets, appointment scheduling platform demonstrating cancelled appointments or bookings, screenshots of cancelled events. So they're pretty much saying that you don't need to necessarily provide proof at time, but you need to have proof that if you get an order, a bit like most of our tax system, it's self-assessed, so you need to have these things in place, but it will be a self-assessment. So you will declare these things, you will sign to say that, yes, these things are true, I meet all the eligibility criteria, but therefore you need to have the documentation. But they're being pretty flexible there. So, for instance, if my business was eligible and I had a full week of appointments booked and I had no other way to do it, and my revenue dropped and I had to cancel because they could only be done face-to-face, I could use my calendar to show, okay, these were my bookings, these were the systems, this is what happened. So there's some of the things you can use to do it. Obviously, if you had an event that got cancelled, so if you're running a production company and you couldn't run your event on the weekend, that would show. Obviously, if you're in retail or hospitality, you're going to have proof that, look, this is my turnover last week, this is my turnover this week. All these things are going to be what's important. But I think that key one that I'm going to keep mentioning, because I know it's going to impact a lot of people, is this $75,000 of turnover and being registered for GST. So that's one of the requirements. There was a similar requirement for JobKeeper. So unfortunately, if you don't meet that, you won't be eligible. Now, I'm not sure at this time on how it works if you're a small sole trader and you're under that $75,000, whether you're eligible for the Commonwealth government payment. I'm not sure how that works. That's something I'm still doing a bit of research on. And then, so they're saying, so Treasury will contact via email successful grant recipients from this, but I think that's related to the 2020 grant. So I'll skip that. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure how this all is going to work. It's still in the process. So I think they're still opening up how that all gets applied for. I have had a few clients start to ask me, but again, I'm still looking at these things. It's only been announced today. I'll keep these things updated on my Facebook page. And like I said, I'm hoping to make a video on this in the next few days once I know more about it and how it all is going to work. So that's kind of talking about the financial impacts there of some of the grants that we've got in place here in SA. And then obviously that Commonwealth grant covers the other states as well. So that's the financial impact of the lockdown. So as you can see, there's definitely different things that go into place of mental, financial, and it's really important that you're seeking that help, whether it's from friends and family for the mental side of thing or the support services, and then from the financial point of view, seek the advice of your accountant. Do search up. All I search there is to find that information. So you can search South Australia COVID grants, New South Wales COVID grants, Commonwealth COVID grants. Look these things up. Keep an eye on the media, but obviously once you see in the media, make sure you do a bit of your own research. Find out what the dates are, what the eligibility criteria is, because you don't want to think you're eligible for something and then go to apply and not be eligible and then not have a plan. And it all comes down to, like I said, putting your plans in place prior to these lockdowns so that you've got financial backups, you've got emergency funds. As an individual, you don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck and then go to pay your bills and not have the money there. As a business, you don't want to not have money to cover the next few weeks. You need to have a good cash flow. You need to have a long-term positive cash flow. So these things are all important. And then having plans in place, that contingency plans, if things happen like this, what's your plan? Do you have a plan? So now I hope that's been interesting. I hope that's answered some questions. If people do have questions about any of that or anything else, chuck them on Facebook, chuck them on YouTube, because I'll get to them. I'll jump in. I did have one question earlier here. So what will these lockdowns around Australia do to the share market? So it's always interesting what happens to the share market with COVID. So initially when COVID first came along, the share market dropped quite dramatically, but we've had a long and steady increase since then. So I think we're at pretty decent levels considering that there's been a global pandemic over the last 15 months or so. Obviously, these lockdowns are coming into place in Australia. Our share market is quite small compared to the global market. So what impact these lockdowns have on our market isn't always going to be necessarily reflective of the situation, because our market does depend so much on what the overseas markets, what the American markets are doing. And some of these overseas countries are handling COVID very differently. So obviously, for those that aren't aware, the other day in the UK, they celebrated what they're calling Freedom Day, where they've cut all restrictions and gone back to everything. So reopened nightclubs and things that hadn't closed. So that's obviously a big boost to their economy. The US are running, so we've just had the NBA finals over there. Congratulations to the Milwaukee Bucks, who have won the title today. But they've got the situation now where they've had big crowds in those things. So we've got crowds at things like that. We've got crowds at different events over in the US, which means the economy is starting to flow again. So all these things are quite interesting, that on a global scale, things are opening up again, which helps them and helps those global companies. And quite often this can have a flow-on effect here in Australia. Now, obviously, some Australian companies are going to be impacted, and that's going to drop. But it will be interesting what the overall market happens. What also is interesting in the Australian market, the buy now, pay later sector has been hit really hard in the last few weeks due to, I think it's an Apple buy now, pay later scheme that's been announced. So the market's been a bit up and down anyway. So yeah, lockdowns don't always have the exact effect you'd think on a market, in particular here in Australia, because our market is small compared to the global market. Sometimes things that happen overseas can have a bigger impact than something that's happening here. Sometimes a little bit hard to get your head around, but that's the economics for you. So I'm not sure. I'm obviously not an economist. I don't know what's going to happen with these kind of things, but yeah, it will be interesting. It depends on obviously how long these lockdown plays out, and industries. Obviously things like travel industries, so our travel companies are going to be impacted heavier because flights have all decreased again. We don't have many flights going again. And yeah, so that's really interesting. So we've got a comment here. So companies which rely upon digital consumers will probably increase in value, market cap by noticeable margin. And that's what happens when these things, and that's what I talked about earlier in the video of what's your business? What are you doing? What can you do to pivot into digital markets? And those that can have markets that are, so those that have products and services that can be consumed digitally then grow during lockdowns. So Netflix, companies like that, Stan, all those digital assets where people are watching things. We've got digital places like Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all these things that people are using more. Or is it going to be businesses? Like I said, hopefully my business keeps growing in these kind of things because I am offering online services. YouTube. So I know a lot of people started YouTube channels during last year's initial lockdowns because people, again, consuming more digital content. So those that have got digital consumers are going to grow, and therefore potentially market cap and share price is going to grow for those things versus those that are reliant so much on face-to-face interactions are potentially going to reduce. So an example of two companies that are in the same industry that potentially could be impacted differently is something like if we got Flight Centre and Webjet. Now, Flight Centre does have an online system, but it has a lot of in-person physical stores. So that's what their business was initially built around. There's something like Webjet, it's all online. Now, they're both in the travel industry. They're both expected to be hit really dramatically. But think about from a business point of view, what a lockdown does to those two businesses. For something like Webjet, it doesn't affect them too much when it comes to the actual running of their business. Now, obviously, their consumer base is not going to be demanding flights, so that's going to impact them. But if you look at something like Flight Centre, where a lot of their income, I imagine, would be in-person stuff, that gets impacted. So, no, for instance, I've got a Flight Centre voucher and I can't use that online. I have to go in store. Obviously, I can't go use that now, even though I want to book for the future. So it is interesting, and that's a really good comment that companies that are relying upon digital consumers will probably increase in value. And I think that's going to be true just in general as our economy and as our business and as our personal lives shift, and they continue to shift to online matters. Obviously, companies that deal in that or are able to pivot to that quickest are going to be the ones that can succeed in the long term. So, yeah, that's a really interesting topic. So if anyone does have any other questions, make sure you chuck them in. I'll give you a bit of a summary like I do at the end of what's going on in my life, with the channel, with my business. So we're still in tax time. So the good thing, as I keep talking about, my business does so much through online, through phone appointments. So dealt with a few different new business owners this week, which is really exciting. And then the YouTube channel, we're getting close to 1,000 subscribers. We've ticked over the 900 subscriber mark. So we're in that final 100 countdown. I think going into tonight's video, we're at 903 subscribers. So if you are watching over on Facebook and you haven't subscribed, head over to the YouTube channel. So we're into that last countdown to the 1,000 subscribers. I'm hoping to do some kind of giveaway at 1,000 subscribers. So if people want that, make sure you leave a comment, hit that like button so I know that that's what people want. And yeah, that's really exciting. The 1,000 subscriber mark is just a goal I set myself at the start of the year. I try not to get too caught up in the numbers. I try to just make sure I'm constantly putting out quality videos, quality content that's helpful for people. But it's really taken off in the last few months. So I'm picking up a lot of business, which has been great. I'm picking up some money through the affiliate program, which is helping me expand the channel. So I've got a new mic up here. I've bought webcams. I've got my lights up there. I'm hoping to get more lighting, hoping to buy a new camera. So really, I'm just trying to reinvest all the money back into the channel, the little bits I do earn. If you have a look on my channel, I've just got some new thumbnails done from someone. So they're really awesome. So you'll hopefully see some really improvement in my quality of my thumbnails going forward. So that's exciting. So I'm doing lots of things to help grow the channel, because the more the channel can grow, the more people I can help, which is really exciting for me. The more we build a little bit of community. I was only talking to someone earlier today about how cool it is that the community is so supportive of me. I've had so much positive feedback from it. And then so much positive feedback from people that I've never met before. They've gone, I've watched one of your videos, and therefore I want you to help me further with things. So that's really cool. So I do appreciate everyone that's tuned in tonight's live. So I've got plenty more work to do. So I will get back into that. And like I said, hopefully I'll have a video up in the next few days on some of these COVID payments that will go into a little bit more detail on some of them. And then hopefully another video on Sunday. So keep your eye out for that. And I appreciate everyone's support. And I'll talk to you again soon.